Well, good evening, good evening. I want to thank you so much for joining me this evening. This evening on the In Review, ladies and gentlemen, it's a Thursday night, Thursday, the 20th of the 6th, 2024. And I want to welcome everyone, welcome all those who are on Instagram, those on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok as well. My topic tonight, which is have you voted yet? I coined that phrase, have you voted yet? Because I'm in a position where I can vote. That's my voters from the postal votes. So therefore, people can start their voting for the general election, July the 4th. May the 4th be with you in the UK. Who is going to win? We don't know. It's going to either be, as far as I'm concerned, Rishi Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer. The polls are pointing towards Keir Starmer at this time. But one of the good things which is happening tonight, and which I'm going to actually tune into, is actually there's a big question time. And I'm going to see if I can actually tune into. I hope I won't get any copyright infringement. But if anything, I'll see how it goes. But it's a good way of sort of hearing what Rishi Sunak is saying and what Keir Starmer is saying. It started from 8 o'clock on question time, and there was Mr. Ed Davey from Lib Dem, and also John Sweeney from the Scottish Party, and then you're gonna have Mr. Sir Keir Starmer, who is presently on, and then you're gonna have Mr. Rishi Sunak. And yes, that's what's going to be. So I'm going to maybe tune into it. I don't know if Gary's going to come or so, but I believe it's very important to just, wanted to do. I was deciding not to do the show, but I said, let me just do the show and see if I can incorporate the discussion in it at the same time. Also, just want to say that the diaspora conference, which was in Jamaica, that seemed to be ended. And what is this here? Yeah, that seemed to have ended. They said there was 1,200 persons attending as well, or registered. There are question signs as to that. But nevertheless, still, I believe it's always good when you have persons can come together in the sense of wanting to have a very fruitful discussion in regards to the diaspora and in regards to Jamaica. And also, I believe that it is very important for a massive rethinking as to how Jamaicans overseas can play a part in the governance of Jamaica in different ways. It doesn't have to be in Parliament or Senate, but there are different ways or strategic ways that has to be done. And also in the whole aspect of the constitutional reform. Yep. So without further ado, let's get on right into it and start the show. Yeah. Now I'm going to go over to BBC and listen to Sir Keir Starmer. Right? Here we go. At stage. Let me see if I can do it. Nope. What is going on? At the stage. There we are. There we are. There we go. Let's see if we can hear.
It was very humbling and uplifting. But I also discovered that the single most common reason that 6 to 10-year-olds are admitted to the children's hospital there, same across the country, is to have their teeth taken out because of teeth decay. That is a complete and utter disgrace. So we need to move the model and change the model for the NHS as well. Thank you.
I'm going to take some more. Can I gently encourage you to move back just
just
so that we can see you more clearly for the viewers at home?
It's like that box inside the pitch
it's
in
not
football,
that.
isn't it?
Well, you know, because obviously you play a lot of football, but you're just better lit there. So yes, person back in the pink top, yeah.
At the moment, tensions with Europe are at an all-time sort of high. With more and more right-wing governments in Europe, how are you going to negotiate that and make sure we have a safe relationship?
With Europe, and look, I'm worried about some of the tendencies across Europe because I'm obviously leading a progressive party, and I think that the answers to the problems we face globally, whether that's climate, whether that's conflict, whether that's extreme poverty, getting our economy going, are progressive answers to that. Now, I will have to work, if I'm elected into government, with all leaders across Europe, but I will always make that progressive argument that in the end, you have to stabilise your economy. You have to get investment in to make sure that we get the jobs of the future. We have to take our climate obligations seriously and not see them as just a sort of challenge that we don't want, but as a brilliant opportunity for the next generation of jobs, and play our full part in descaling conflict. If we're able to get over the line in 2 weeks' time, we have a platform for that, which is really important. If you look across Europe, I am genuinely worried by some of the political trends and moves that we see. Thank you.
Woman here in the red top.
Sorry, I'm going to take it back to the NHS.
Yeah.
I'm a nurse and I work on a very busy surgical admissions unit. You're going about the waiting list and everything and putting money in, but how are we going to see that on the ward? Because all I can see is we've got pressure all the time, and say you're going to put more on the get rid of the waiting list, that's putting more pressure on the staff. So what support are you going to give the staff on the ward?
So that you can treat more patients,
Yes.
that's your point.
Yeah.
The first thing I'd say is we treat you with respect. And I say that because we have a Prime Minister who 18 months or so ago said, I'm going to get the waiting list down. And he said, hold me personally responsible. And now he hasn't got them down because they've gone up, not down. He blames you. He blames the NHS staff. We will never do that because I know how hard you work all of the time, in COVID in particular, and then the waiting list. But we do have to take the pressure off the waiting list. Now, that is an ask of staff. It is an ask of staff. I'm not going to say otherwise because we will be working evenings and weekends to get those lists down. It will help because all of the hospitals I've been to say having that waiting list is a real drag on what else we can do. We will work, we'll pay the staff properly to do it. I'm convinced we can do it, by the way, because in St Thomas's in London and one of the Leeds hospitals I went to, I met the teams that are doing this already because they've decided they can't have these waiting lists at these levels.
We've got a nurse here. Are you prepared to do that?
Well, I don't work in a big hospital in London or Leeds. I work in Shropshire, and I don't think we see that the same. We seem to get forgotten about more.
But if you were asked to work as the Shadow Health Secretary is suggesting you work extra hours in order to try and treat more patients.
Yeah,
could you do
if you got better pay.
Yeah.
I mean, because at the minute all I see is it all goes on agency staff and the staff that are willing to get the pay, and we don't get the pay.
I think there's a separate issue though, and you're quite right, which is we need the workforce coming in, so we're not using agency staff in the same way. And that requires a workforce plan, which we've also got fully costed to come in to effectively be the cavalry that comes in and gives you the support you need on the front.
Take time, won't it? It's going to take years.
It will take time, but
it'll take years.
Yeah. Let me just deal with this because I've been leader of the Labour Party now for 4.5 years, and every year we've had a winter crisis in the NHS. You'll be completely familiar with that. And what we do is we put a sticking plaster on that in about January or February. It just about limps through to the summer. And then the only guarantee is you're going to have another one next year and it's going to be worse. And everybody says everything else will take too long. Don't tell me things that are going to take 3 or 4 years, and nothing gets done. So we go round and round in circles, not fixing it. Sticking plaster politics is one of the biggest problems of politics now, which is politicians not being honest about how long it's actually going to take to fix things.
Okay, well, be honest with us now.
Time to train the staff.
Let's
get started.
Be honest with us now.
Not put it on.
We know how bad waiting lists are.
Yes.
And most of us are familiar with some of the problems in the NHS because we all use it. So when can the people here expect to see an improvement in the NHS, be able to feel that they can get an appointment at least within a month, say? Should we wait 2 years, 3 years, 6 months?
We will start the work on waiting lists on day one in government if we're elected into government. I've set out the big things that we want to do in government, but also the things we'll do on day one, the first step.
And in terms of when we can expect to feel an improvement in the NHS, how long should we wait?
We'll get those operations going as quickly as we can with the staff. We've got the models from the London hospital, the Leeds hospital. We're asking those teams to go around the country to talk to other hospitals, maybe the one that you work in, say, this is how we've done it. This is what we would recommend. Now, however long
for example,
takes,
you're saying,
we will get
how long will it take?
Make a start on that absolutely straight away.
You've made that clear.
Everybody here will either be on a waiting list or know somebody who's on a waiting list. It's incredibly discomforting, and it means people aren't able to go to work.
So
that's not helping the economy.
You're making an appeal, and we all hear it and understand it, to be realistic about how long things take. So your pledge is to get waiting lists down. When can we expect waiting lists to come down to a reasonable level?
It will take. We will be able to do 2 million a year.
Wow.
This model. That means that over the course of the Parliament, we'll get it down and clear the backlog completely.
By the end of the Parliament, that's your
yeah,
pledge.
yeah, but hear me out, because this is difficult stuff.
Yes.
We did it last time we were in power.
Mhm.
The Labour government then said, because the waiting list, you've all probably seen those charts where the waiting lists are through the roof when the Tories come out of government. We then bring them down.
Also, Labour spent a lot more on the NHS than you are pledging. But
yeah, we got the waiting list, the lowest ever level and the highest possible satisfaction in the NHS. And I'm really proud that we did it. And if we were still there, we wouldn't be in the problem we are in this country.
Let me take another question. Yes, woman here.
With all of the backtracking on policies from Labour, especially around education and education fees for higher education, why should anybody believe that you'll produce a stable and trustworthy government?
Thank you for the question on tuition fees. And I'm really glad to get it because...
Well, it's not just about tuition fees. Hang on a minute.
It's
about,
fees.
yes, but you're talking about U-turns generally, aren't you?
Generally, you
okay,
haven't
so
looked at
scrapping the two-child benefit cap.
Yep.
You were going to scrap tuition fees. You're going to nationalise mail, rail, energy and water services. You're going to have 28 billion a year for green industry. I mean, I could go on. I don't need to.
Yep, so
it's about more than just education.
Yeah, so let me address it straight on. Tuition fees. Very expensive for students. Don't work very well. Students come out with a huge debt around their neck. And 5 years ago, I said we should get rid of them. Now, 5 years down the line, the economy's been very badly damaged. We don't have the money to do everything we want to do. We do need to change the tuition fees. But I had a choice to make, which was of the available money, do I use it for getting rid of tuition fees, which would help students? I accept that because I know how hard it is. Or do I use that money to get our waiting list down? That's a political decision that I took. I'm not going to do the tuition fees abolition because I want to put that money to get our NHS back on its feet. That is my decision. It's a political decision. I accept it's different to the position I put forward 5 years ago when the damage hadn't been done to the economy, but that's the position because I don't think until we get those waiting lists down, we can afford to do the tuition fees as well. So we had to make a choice about it. And it's a straight choice. And you know, I'm saying this to you before the election. If you think that waiting lists down is more important than getting rid of tuition fees, if that's the right choice, then you'll go along with me. If you say, no, I'd rather the waiting list stayed where they were, bad luck to all the people on the waiting list, but at least students aren't paying fees, that's a different choice, not the one I would take. The other example that you put to me is nationalising energy. When we had the energy crisis 2 years ago, when everybody's prices went through the roof, both at home and in their businesses, I asked my team to mock up what the options were. One option was nationalising energy. That would have cost tens of billions of pounds. That money would have been spent on shareholders to buy them off, and not a penny could have been used to lower the bills. The alternative was a windfall tax on oil and gas companies to cap the bills of many people in this room and across the country, and to ensure that people actually survive through the last 2 years. I took the second choice. I don't think I could have stood here today and say, I didn't do anything about your bills, sorry about that. You've all had to pay a fortune, but I did pay off the shareholders and nationalise energy. I'm a common sense politician. I worked through the issues, and to me, it did not make sense to nationalise energy and not get the bills down. So I decided we should go for getting the bills down. They are political choices. I'm telling you what they are before the election, and people can then make their mind up according to what they think.
Well, that's what our audience here will be doing. Let's hear the question from Susan Purdy's. Is that you, Susan? Oh, that's you, right.
Given your severe criticism of the Conservatives on the topic of immigration, do you think it's acceptable at this point, so near the general election, for your own party not to commit to specific targets around this critical topic?
And you're talking about overall migration?
Yes.
Yeah, but migration is at record levels at the moment under this government. They've completely lost control. We need to get that number down. We need to get it significantly down. I'm not going to put an arbitrary figure on it because every single politician who's put a number on it has never met that number. But we need to get it down. We need to get it down. But
you're asking, is that a reason not to do it?
Not to do it.
Look, we want to get it down significantly. It needs to be balanced immigration so that it works for our economy and works for our country. We need to get it down. But if we're going to do that, we need to understand what the problem is. And the problem at the moment is we haven't got the skills that we need in this country. So many people are coming on work visas. So we need
Getting into the question time with the leader of the opposition,
that
which
the
is
workforce
Keir
is
Starmer.
available here for the
And
jobs
then
that we
next
need
after
doing.
that, you're going to
One
have
specific example
the Prime
is
Minister.
social care.
I felt
Many
it was
people
best
coming here
to
are coming into social care
do
and
this
working hard in social
and to
care,
play this instead of
by the
me
way.
trying to
But
listen,
that's
but I
because
wanted
we
to listen
haven't
to
got
it
a
as well.
plan for the staff within
Very interesting.
social care. They're on fragmented. My sister's a care worker. They're on fragmented contracts, poor terms and conditions, and many of them leave. Most of them leaving social care go to work in the NHS because they've got a better framework for pay and for progression. So we've got a problem we need to fix here. And we would have a fair pay agreement for all care workers.
In fairness, we're
so
getting away from having a target on migration numbers.
At the same time.
How, if you are not going to set any kind of target, how can you know that the plans you're putting in place, for example, building something like 300,000 houses a year, or how many staff you want to have in the NHS, if you don't know how many people you're anticipating having in the country, how can you possibly know that you're planning correctly?
Well, we want to get the number down, so we'll see if that number is coming down.
You've made that point, but if you have literally no idea, or not that you're going to share with us anyway, of how many people you think is a sensible number to have coming into the country and staying here, invited in on visa, whatever it might be, how can you possibly plan for our public services?
Well, we've got a plan for our social care workforce with a fair pay agreement so that we retain the good people we've got working in care. We've got a plan for construction, for example, to build those houses.
But how do you know it'll be the right number of houses if you don't know how many people will live here?
Well, we need 1.5 million houses because too many people are waiting for a house that they want to live in. The dream of home ownership is
what
real.
is it that caused the shortage of houses?
Own their own home. The average age
Nigel Farage.
for somebody to get on the housing ladder is 36 or 37. It is impossible or near on impossible for young people to get their first home. We have to build more houses. That means we have to take tough decisions on things like planning. I was at a housing development here just in Outer York this morning, 650 houses being bought by locals, but it took 15 years for the, from the plans being submitted to the houses being built.
We are far off migration targets. Forgive me, it's a kiss on, but we are well off the target now. Let's get, I appreciate you've got the message you want to put out, but we also need to actually directly answer the questions being put by the audience. Kate Collins, whereabouts are you?
Kate.
Hi, Keir. 3 years ago, you criticised your MP, Rosie Duffield, for saying only women have a cervix. You recently backtracked on this. What do you believe now, and how do we know that you will stick to your views?
So Rosie Duffield said in 2020, only women have a cervix. You said in response, that's something that shouldn't be said, it's not right.
Well, look, on the biology, I agree with what Tony Blair said the other day in relation to men having penises and women having vaginas. But what I will say is
so you changed your position?
Just on the biology, that doesn't help on the gender.
Listen up.
Some people
Listen
don't
up.
identify with the gender that they're born into. And they go through a lot of anxiety and distress. And my view in life is to respect and give dignity to everyone, whatever their position. And I will always do that. And I was worried at the time, and you referenced that particular debate, by the way in which the debate was being conducted, because it got very toxic, very divided, very hard line, and we lost sight of people in that. So much so that that drags you to a place where we end up, as we did end up, with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom making a trans joke in Parliament when the mother of a murdered trans teenager was watching on. That is a shocking place to get to.
All right. You want to come back in?
So the question, it's actually alluding to tolerance as well.
Yeah.
And having tolerance of differing views. And I do appreciate the comments you've made. However, how are you going to deal with when people in your party are going to come up against you? It's likely you're going to be in government. Who knows if you'll have a supermajority? And as John Swinney actually mentioned earlier, politics can become polarized. How are you going to reduce the effect of that?
By bringing the country together. I think this is such an important point because politics is about the policies that you put forward at the election, obviously. But it's also about how you do politics and how you deal with difficult topics. I want to do two things if we get into government in 2 weeks' time. and they're about the mindset of government. The first thing is, I want to return politics to service, because I think it's got far too much into self-entitlement. Look at the gambling stuff that's going on today. Politicians who think that making money or self-entitlement is the reason they're in politics. So we need to return it to service. The second thing, to go directly to your question, is I want to take the opportunity to bring the country together, because what's happened in politics, in my view, over the last 10, 15 years or so, is it's become more and more divided and toxic, and everybody's trying to find the difference between us rather than the points of connection. And Jo Cox, who tragically was murdered, was a good friend of mine. We came into Parliament at the same time. Our children are broadly the same age. What she said in her maiden speech, that we have far more in common than we do which divides us, that is what I carry. That is what I want to have the opportunity, if we get into power in 2 weeks, to implement, so that we actually, we're good at this as a country. During the pandemic, people were looking out for each other. Yes, food, medicine, of course, but just the gentle knock on the door of a neighbour that perhaps we didn't know very well, to say, are you all right? We're a good country, a reasonable, tolerant country. We're pretty live and let live if we don't go down the politics of division. And I want to stop that.
There's lots of questions, so I'm going to take 2 or 3 in a row and then hand over to you. So, man there in the zip up top. Yeah, that's it.
You state in your manifesto that you plan on removing the tax breaks for private schools, but do you not think that this will put further stress on the already strained state system?
No, I don't.
So shall I take 2 or 3?
What is happening here? I'm tuning into the leaders' debate on question time. We had Mr. Sweeney, who came on second. For the Scottish National Party, we had Ed Davey for the Lib Dems, and now we've got the.
Doing 5% deposits, but how am I actually meant to afford
Sorry.
to save for that deposit if I'm paying all of that money in rent? And that's the second part to that. When will your track record for paying rent count towards you being able to then secure a mortgage? Because there's lots of people, I myself, I pay £1,000 in rent each month, but yet I can't afford to get a mortgage. So when will that help?
Okay, so that's 2 pretty meaty questions. Let's start with private schools.
Look, on private schools, I completely understand that families up and down the country work hard and save hard.
Next coming up shortly will be the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Aspirational for their children. But all parents are aspirational for their children, every single parent. And I want every single child, wherever they come from, whatever their background, and whichever school they go to have the same opportunities. At the moment, in our state secondary schools, we don't have the basic teachers that we need for things like maths. Now, that's really shocking, because if you don't have, some people here and watching will be familiar with maths being taught by the supply teacher or the PE teacher, but not a designated maths teacher. That really impacts on the lives of people in our state secondary schools, because if you don't do well at maths, then that inhibits what you can go on to do in A-levels, and it will affect the job you can get and apprenticeships, etc., etc. That's intolerable. So I want to recruit the staff we need to teach core subjects like maths, so that every child, for example, has a maths teacher to teach maths. In order to fund that, we're going to remove the tax break on private schools. That's a tough decision. It's not an easy one. I do know how hard people work, but I've got to look at it across the board. I've got to make sure those teachers are there for all children, and make sure that everyone has that chance, so that wherever you come from, whatever your background. On the question of rent and mortgages, this is a real, I mean, you're obviously living it, but young people who are working hard, on a reasonably decent wage, but then having to pay a huge part of it for rent over and over again, because rents are through the roof. The housing isn't what it should be.
Well, there's lots of people here know how bad the problem is. You're asking very specifically, what can be done to help when rents are high? And particularly, will how much you pay in rent go towards being able to buy a property?
Yeah, so on the question of buying property, we want a low deposit scheme, which is what we'll put in place, so that people who've proved they can pay, because they're often paying more for their rent than they pay on their mortgage, so the ability to pay isn't the issue, but they haven't got the ability to save for a mortgage, because your mum and dad haven't got the money and they're
say for the
paying it all out
deposit
on rent.
specifically.
So that's the first thing. The second thing, which is also important for those that are in rented accommodation, is we have to stop the landlords ripping off tenants who are doing, you'll probably be familiar, this bidding war, so that when you go to get a rented property, the landlord just does a bidding war. Who'll pay more? Who'll pay more? Who'll pay more? Until people are paying through the roof. We have to end that.
How will you
we
end
have
that?
to-
So how will you end that? If it's private landlords, how can you stop that?
Well, we can pass legislation to say you can't do it because it is driving rents through the roof and it's not fair on people. It's taking advantage.
So what, saying
of the
landlords have
market.
to take the lowest bidder, or I mean,
Yeah,
what's the detail of that?
To put the process around how this is, you cannot have a landlord, but this is what we will
Well, I appreciate
outlaw.
what you're saying cannot happen, but I'm just wondering specifically, if you've got a private landlord saying, I want to give it to this person or that person, how do you legislate
No, that's
for that
not how
to
they do
happen?
it. That's not how they do it. They say, one person says X pounds a week. Someone says, I'll give you X plus £10, £20, £30. They then go back to the first person and say, I've already had a better offer for X plus this. Will you out? So you get this bidding war going on until the rents go through the roof.
So you're
That's
saying they
what we
have to
want
take the
end.
first offer? Is
But-
that what you're saying for private landlords?
No, we can't have this bidding war like this.
No,
We
I
cannot.
get that. Are you telling private landlords they have to take the first offer then?
They have to. We have to have a scheme in place to stop them driving the rent up and up and up.
Okay, I'm
And
still
it's-
not
it's-
entirely clear how you're going to do that.
Well, no,
but
but
you've
the
got
other thing
about
I
a
do
minute
want
left.
to address
Just
is
want
this,
to let you
which
know.
is deposits. Lots of renters are paying huge deposits, and we have to stop that as well and make sure the conditions are good within the housing they're buying. But at the end of the day, there's no way out of the renting problem until we build more houses. Because without the houses that people can afford to live in and buy, then more people are renting, and that is bingo for landlords who are making a fortune out of this.
Okay, our time is up, Keir Starmer. Thank you very much for all your questions.
Okay, so we just heard from Sir Keir Starmer, the opposition leader, and the polls are pointing towards him being the next prime minister on July the 5th. Of course, election July the 4th. Lorna, you said you're going to miss the general election, won't have time to do a postal vote. Yeah, which is unfortunate, yeah, because that deadline is gone now. It's a pity that you're going to miss that one. Every vote counts. But hey, we're going to have Rishi Sunak now, the prime minister. He's going to come on and do the final leg of this debate on question time. Here we go.
So we've got a number of questions. We've got about half an hour. I'm going to try and get through them. Let's start with our first one, which is from Kevin Dobson.
Hi, we've had 5 prime ministers in the last 7 years, and one of them managed to last for 6 weeks. As a result, I think we are something of an international laughingstock. I'm asking if you would confess to us tonight, even just a small amount of embarrassment, to be leading the Conservative Party into this election campaign.
Well, good evening, everyone. Fiona, thank you for inviting me. And Kevin, was that right?
Yeah.
When I first got this job, I stood on the steps of Downing Street and spoke to all of you as Prime Minister for the first time. And I acknowledge that. I said very clearly that mistakes had been made, and that's why I was standing there in front of you. In fact, you may remember I spent the summer before that arguing against the policies that my predecessor had suggested were right. I didn't think they were right for the country, and I said so. But what I'd ask you to do is judge me on my 18 months that I've been in office. I came in with one primary job, and that was to bring back economic stability after the difficult few years that we've had. You saw yesterday, we had the very welcome news that inflation is back to target. Now, I know that that's only starting to make a difference to all of your lives and everyone else's, but that's the path we're on. And if we stick with that path, I can continue to cut your taxes, give you more financial security, and actually deliver on the things that I know you want me to.
So Kevin's question is about character, it's about trust, it's about integrity. I think it's fair to say. We've got a question from Graham Donald on matters more recent. Graham.
Aren't these emerging allegations about betting on the election date the absolute epitome of the lack of ethics that we have had to tolerate from the Conservative Party for years and years?
So, just to be clear, for those of you who might not get up with it, 3 people are being investigated by the Gambling Commission about placing a bet on the timing of the election. 2 are Conservative Party candidates, Craig Williams, Laura Saunders, and her husband, Tony Lee, is the Conservative Party Director of Campaigning. They are being investigated. There's also an issue with a police officer who's been arrested. But these are three people connected to the Conservative Party.
Yeah. Well, like you, I was incredibly angry to learn of these allegations. It's a really serious matter. It's right that they're being investigated properly by the relevant law enforcement authorities, including, as Fiona said, a criminal investigation by the police. You know, I want to be crystal clear that if anyone has broken the rules, they should face the full force of the law, and that's what those investigations are there to do. And I hope that they do their work as quickly and as thoroughly as possible.
There are calls for them to be suspended. These are party candidates. But you're happy not to suspend them, to let them carry on and go on to the election. Obviously, they've not admitted anything. No one is saying that a decision has been taken about their guilt or their innocence. But you're happy for them to go into the election and represent you and the Conservative Party.
Well, Fiona, as you said, these investigations are ongoing. They are rightly confidential. One of them is a criminal investigation that's been conducted by the police. These are very
yes, but that's a
serious
police officer.
matters.
Talk about the two party candidates.
All I can say is they are serious investigations. It's right that they are done thoroughly, confidentially. The integrity of that process should be respected. But what I can tell you is if anyone is found to have broken the rules, not only should they face the full consequences of the law, I will make sure that they are booted out of the Conservative Party.
Woman there in the white T-shirt.
As a parent of 17-year-olds who have grown up in the last 5 years against the backdrop of COVID and the shenanigans of the Tory party, what are you going to do as a political party to rebuild trust in young people and politicians?
There's a bit of a theme emerging.
You know, if you're asking about why you can trust me in particular, I'll tell you, actually very simply, right? It's because my grandparents came to this country with very little. And in 2 generations, I'm standing here as your Prime Minister. So this country did something extraordinary for my family. And I feel an enormous debt of gratitude to repay that. And I'm in this so that I can make the same difference to as many people as possible as the difference that this country made to my family. So I can happily talk to you about lots of policies like national service, helping your children get onto the housing ladder with cuts to stamp duty, getting them great apprenticeships. But fundamentally, I'm in this because of what this country has done for my family, and I will work very hard to repay that and make as many people's lives better in the way that my life has been transformed by being here.
National service is not something that young people that I speak to are particularly interested in. They do a lot of volunteering and things already on their own. It was more about the trust that young people can get from all politicians in the last 5 years, growing up against that, and the trust that can be rebuilt in politicians in general.
Okay, I think you've answered that. Let's take another question now. This man in a blue sweater and blue shirt, yeah.
Despite my personal support for the scheme, many of my peers at school, so I'm a college student, many of my peers can't see the potential benefits from the National Service Scheme. How are you going to enforce and also incensitise young people to take up the scheme?
Yeah. So actually, I've been everywhere across the country talking to young people about it and talking to parents about it, and I've heard an enormous amount of support for it. And I'll tell you why. I was with someone just the other day who I'd seen in the evening, someone in their early 20s, probably not that dissimilar in age from you. And they were telling me about something that had just happened to them that afternoon. They had seen an elderly person fall and damage their hip quite badly. And because they had volunteered with St. John's Ambulance, they were able to help that person and be with them, give them some sense of reassurance, get the ambulance there. And that person was incredibly grateful. And then I was talking to this person a little bit more, and they were explaining how they'd got into St. John's Ambulance because they'd been through a difficult time in their lives, and it was something that they did to give them a sense of purpose and contribution to society, and they found it a really fulfilling and meaningful experience, as well as in that case, giving them some skills, practical skills, that have allowed them to help other people in their life. And that's why I think national service is a good idea.
So,
that one person's example is a great reason to spread this to as many people as possible, make sure everyone can have those skills and opportunities, have a sense of contributing to something bigger than themselves. I think that gives people meaning and purpose, and also contribute to our country's overall resilience and security. And that's why, as I said, that one story encapsulates, I think, very well why this is a great idea.
So you say you've been talking to young people, you've got us that one story. Have you also been talking to your former chief of the naval staff, who says it's bonkers? And the former chief of the General Staff, who says it's electoral opportunism. Have you spoken to them?
I've spoken to lots of people in
Have you
the armed
spoken to them?
forces. Well, I wouldn't be appropriate, Fiona, to start politicising the armed forces in an election campaign.
Well, it's just
but
they've
you
been
can rest-
very critical of your campaign, and given they know a bit or two about the army, I wonder if you thought you might find out why they're so critical.
Because I've spoken to lots of people in the armed forces, and they themselves have been working on schemes to make it easier for young people to engage with the armed forces. That's something that they themselves have been working on. Those are the conversations I've been having with them for many months, and it's really important for people to know the military option is optional. Right? No one's going to be forced to do it. It's actually going to be very selective,
Well, the whole
competitive.
thing's going to be optional, isn't it?
National service will be compulsory. The military option will be something that people choose to do.
Oh, I see. So how will you make people do it?
Sorry?
If national service is going to be compulsory, how will you make people do it?
Well, you'll have a set of sanctions and incentives, and we will look at the models that are existing around Europe
Like
to get
what?
the appropriate mix of those. There's a range of different options that exist.
For example?
There's all sorts of things that people do across Europe, whether that's looking at driving licenses, other access to finance, all sorts of other things. The right thing to do is to allow...
Access to finance. So
Yes.
if people don't want to do national service, what, you're going to take their bank cards away? What do you mean?
There's access. there's lots of different
They can't
models
get a loan?
around Europe. There's lots of different models around Europe. This is being done in multiple countries
I
in
don't
Europe.
doubt it. I'm just asking you what you think.
So there's a range of things, and we will have a royal commission look at all of those, come back to the government and recommend what the appropriate mix of incentives and sanctions is.
Man here in the blue shirt.
4.5 years ago, the Conservative Party campaigned on the oven-ready deal so that Brexit would be done and it'd be great for the country. And that was the heart of your election promises. Why now, 4.5 years later, aren't you saying, look how great Brexit's been for us? It's something that's absent from your manifesto. And what's happened with Brexit has been particularly affecting to young people, their ability to work and educate abroad. And we've benefited from Europe. We benefited from low house prices, from good pensions. We're throwing young people into the fire. And I just don't see anything that you're doing for them.
So just to be clear, is your question about Brexit? Is your question about Brexit or about young people?
I mean, look,
It's about how Brexit has denied young people a future.
Well, look,
Interesting, isn't it?
These debates several years ago. I'm not going to relitigate them. We had a referendum, and the country decided. And now the job is to get on and make sure we realise all the benefits of that. And actually, you don't have to go very far from here to see it in a very tangible way for young people. In Teesside, there's something called a free port, which is a special investment zone that we created using our freedoms from Brexit. It's attracting billions of pounds of investment, creating thousands of incredibly high-quality jobs. I was there recently talking to young apprentices who are now doing fantastic careers in the growth industries of the future, incredibly excited about what that is for them and what that means. And
You
that's
could
just
have
one of the
open free
examples
ports
of things
without
that we're
leaving
doing.
the EU, Prime Minister, as you know.
No, you can't have in the same way, Fiona.
Not perhaps in the same way, but you could open free
it's
ports
how
without
we've
leaving
done
the
them.
EU.
It's exactly how we've done them that means we are attracting the investment and creating the jobs, which is already making a difference to so many people's lives. And that is a very practical example of what we've done. But look, the choice, sir, at this election is about the future. We're not going to go back to Brexit, right? This is about the future. And when it comes to the economy, and when it comes to making sure people who are working hard have the opportunities they deserve, right, what I want to do is build on the progress we've made and give you and every other young person that you're concerned about the opportunity to get a job with a new apprentice, if that's the right thing for them, and then keep more of their hard-earned money by cutting their taxes. That is what I want to do for people. And actually, outside of the EU, we're able to do things that will drive more growth, create more jobs that will allow me to cut more taxes. That's the choice at this election.
Can we take a question from Ronald Thorne? There you are.
Mr Sunak, recent figures show NHS waiting lists have more than doubled under your government. What message have you got for those who were on waiting lists, particularly those who have been on there for more than 1 year?
Yeah. Well, Ronald, first thing, it was Ronald, wasn't it? Yeah. I come from an NHS family, so I was raised with people, surrounded by people who dedicated their lives to trying to make their patients' lives a bit easier. And that's what I spent my childhood doing and working in. So the NHS matters to me personally. And we haven't made as much progress as I would have liked tackling waiting lists in the last 18 months.
And you haven't kept your pledge either, which was to bring waiting lists down.
We have not made
Or specifically,
as much
you made a
progress
pledge and you've broken
as we
it.
would have liked, as I would have liked, right? But what I can tell you is we are putting record investment into the NHS. We've got more doctors and nurses working in it than we ever have, and we're training more. And we're doing different things, making sure that we can diagnose people's cancers earlier by doing scans closer to their homes, allowing you to do more things at your pharmacy to get the treatment that you need quicker. And those things are starting to make a difference. And what we've seen over the past few months is waiting lists now are starting to come down.
They've just gone up.
Over the past few months, over the past 5 months, they've gone down by around 200,000.
Well, they're still higher than where you're being
Yes,
and they have literally just gone up. I'm sure you haven't forgotten.
I freely acknowledge that.
Okay, I just want to be
freely
clear.
acknowledge that. But this is an important point, right? Inflation yesterday hit 2%. When I became Prime Minister, it was 11. Now, that is something that I said I would do, and we've done it. Now, these things don't happen overnight. They don't happen in a straight line. But if you have a plan and you stick to it, you can get the results. You've seen that on inflation. You've seen me stick to a plan. And yes, during that period, it popped up a couple of times and everyone said the same. And I said, if we stick to it, we will get it there. We did. And on waiting lists, we haven't made as much progress as I would have liked. But because of the things we are doing, what you have seen over this year is waiting lists are now starting to come down. There is still a way to go. Of course there is. But we will stick to it and I will get it done.
Convinced?
No. So your message to the people who are still on the waiting list is, sorry, but could do better.
What I want to do is make sure they get their treatment as quickly as possible, which is why we're putting more money in, hiring more doctors and nurses, and doing things differently so they can get the care they need in different ways, often outside of hospitals. Now, I can't promise that's going to be solved overnight. And to give you the context here, Ronald, here's the thing that we're grappling with. During the pandemic, 6 million referrals.
Yeah, I understand the anger,
didn't happen.
but we
Just think
just have
about that for
to
a second. 6
communicate
million.
what we want
Right? And
through
that's what
voting.
we're now grappling with.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Got the
why the
voters,
NHS is under the pressure
got
that
to
it's
vote.
under. 6
That's what you
million
do, vote.
missed referrals that we are
Get
now
involved in the
catching up
political
on.
process.
Right? So the NHS is doing more today than it's ever done in its history because of the investment we've done and all the improvements we've
It's
made.
not treating more people.
Yes, the NHS is today carrying out more checks, tests, scans, operations, treatments, appointments
No
than it's
problem,
done
Larry.
in its history.
So-
But when you're dealing with a 6 million missed referrals that we are now catching up on, it is going to take time to get them down.
Let's have this man here in the front.
So I'm glad, Rishi, you said that there is family who has NHS. You say that there is more operations and patients are more. I'm frontline person. I work in NHS. I'm a doctor here. And I am more frustrated now than I was before because every time there is no funding, nothing. Even for children who are having constipation, soiling, they're being called smelly boy, smelly girl in the school. They're saying nurses will not provide the service. How can you say that the parents will be confident who are frustrated now? The NHS staff, the staff morale is all the way down. There is more strike in your period than ever before. What would you say to that, that people are suffering, the doctors are, the nurses, the therapists, everywhere, the patients are suffering, waiting lists are going up. You said it is going down. I don't know what is said. And then you said 10 billion more investment in your manifesto. What is going to happen? How do we trust? Is it going to happen? And this is, I think, in my view, an eyewash rather than a true deliverable goal.
Well, sir, well, there is more money going into the NHS today than there has been in its history. And I'm sure BBC Verify after that, this debate will verify that for you. But that is the fact. But I don't
Inflation
dismiss
might
your
have something to
concerns.
do with that. But yes.
I absolutely acknowledge your concerns. You and your colleagues are working very hard. You're doing more than we've ever done before. But the situation is challenging because we are dealing with the backlog of missed appointments that you are very well aware of. And I'm sure you were working hard during COVID. You saw what didn't happen during that period. But you talked about parents and children. I'll give you one practical example of something that we're doing that is already making a difference. Now, because of the changes that we've made, if your child has an ear infection, a sore throat, sinusitis, instead of having to make a GP appointment, you can now go direct to your pharmacist to get the medicines that you need. That change that we have made is making an enormous difference already, saving parents an enormous amount of time, making sure their children get the care and the medicines they need much quicker. And if I'm re-elected, we will expand that Pharmacy First programs to cover more different illnesses. And again, these things all add up. No one thing is going to solve the problem, but it's just a demonstration to you of my commitment to making sure you and everyone else has an NHS that they can rely on, having the peace of mind that it's there for them when they need.
Okay. Bit less frustrated now?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
But,
all right, you're not sure. Okay, let's take another question. Woman there, yeah.
Employed migrant workers, such as myself or your parents, for example, contribute to our essential services, fill our skill gaps, and contribute taxes as well. Can you tell me how is setting strict migration limits for themselves or their close relatives beneficial when we still have these skill shortages, particularly in the NHS?
Well, ma'am, you're absolutely right. Of course, migrants can make a contribution to our country and do, like my parents, as you said, like my grandparents. My point is, though, that the levels of migration that we have seen are too high and they need to come down. And that's what we are now doing. If you look at the number of visas that we've issued at the start of this year, it's down by about 30%. The net level of net migration is forecast to halve over the next 12 months. And if I'm elected, there will be a legal migration cap that we vote on in Parliament to guarantee that the numbers come down every year.
But Prime Minister, I think the question here is about how, tell me if I'm paraphrasing this wrong, it's about how to encourage the right kinds of workers here, and if you are not allowing them to bring their families, that is a serious disincentive. I think that's what you're saying, yes?
No, well, what we've done...
Do you accept that?
No, but that's not what we've done. What we have done is say that if people are going to bring family members here, they just need to be able to support them. I think that's reasonable, because any person that comes to our country obviously adds to the pressure on public services, and it's a very reasonable proposition to say if people are bringing their dependents, family dependents, then they need to be able to demonstrate that they're going to be able to support them. That is, I think, a very common sense measure, and that's what we are doing.
You want to come back?
That's okay, I understand that, and I agree with that. But then do you think that social workers, for example, coming from abroad should be paid more in order to be able to support their families? Because they won't be able to on the kind of limits that you've put in place. Given their salaries, they won't be able to support their families.
Well, we have a dedicated visa for social care because we know how important it is, and we need to make sure that we do get the right workers here. That's why, unlike almost every other profession that you can think of, there's a dedicated visa for social care
but
workers.
Will they have to abide by the rule about supporting their families
yes,
as well?
Because what we've seen...
Because the point you're making is they won't necessarily be able to afford to do that on their salary.
And what we've seen is there are lots of people who are prepared to come to our country because it's a fantastic country to fill those vacancies and don't need to bring their family members. And those are the people that we will welcome here. But what we can't do is support an unlimited number of people coming here who are not working. That's just simply not right, and it's not fair. So we may disagree on this, but I do think migration has to come down from the levels we've seen. That's what our migration cap will deliver. That's what we're already doing. And I think basic things like expecting people to support their family if they're bringing them here is actually just fair to everybody, and that's why I believe it's the right thing to do.
Woman here.
My daughter has lived in Australia, now working in Singapore. In both of those countries, without sponsors or a job, there are no benefits, there's no health care as such, and therefore it attracts people that want to go to work hard to live there. In terms of the UK, we do need migration, especially for the lower paid jobs, because our lazy lot won't do it.
Are you talking about our audience here? I do hope not.
Maybe some of them.
Oh, that's fighting talk, but okay.
Who knows? What I can't grasp is regarding the illegal immigration. If we didn't have similar policies introduced, perhaps the attraction for the illegal immigrants, it wouldn't go through the torturous journeys that they do, and we'd be in the situation now where most of this election, I feel, is about immigration. Why can we not be stricter as other countries are, and it works?
Yes, well, ma'am, that's exactly what I want to deliver, because you're right. Illegal immigration is wrong. When people jump the queue and come to our country illegally, it undermines the notion, the sense of fairness that our entire country is built on. Right? And of course, it puts pressure on public services and it causes security issues, but fundamentally it's wrong and it's unfair. That's why I want to stop it. Now, we've made progress, but in order to fix the problem that you've identified, actually, mimicking something that Australia did for a while as well, we need to be able to remove people who come here illegally, send them somewhere else that's safe, because that removes the incentive. That removes the incentive for them to come in the first place. Now, if I'm your Prime Minister, we have flights ready to go that will take illegal migrants to Rwanda. If Keir Starmer is your Prime Minister, the illegal migrants that we've been detained will be out on the streets. They won't be on those planes. We will become the soft touch of Europe just at a time when multiple other European countries are agreeing that our approach is the right approach. And that's what I want to deliver for you as your Prime Minister if you give me the chance.
And I do believe that you would be able to deliver. Which brings me to my next question.
Oh, yes,
Why
because I
did you
must get
bring an
other people in as well. but
early
yes.
election?
Why bring an early election? Why did you call the election early?
Well, I called the election because going back to the second question, my number one job when I became your Prime Minister was make sure that we had economic stability. And when we had that, when inflation was effectively back to normal as it was, the economy was growing healthily, wages were rising, I thought that was the right moment for us to consider our future. And you have a choice. You and everyone else has a choice. Okay. Do we build on the progress we've made? I want to keep cutting your taxes. The alternative, if Keir Starmer is your Prime Minister, is that your taxes are going to go up. That is the choice for everyone at this election, and I'm going to fight very hard to make sure that I can continue the work that we've started, continue delivering financial security, continue cutting your taxes.
Are you glad you called the election when you did? How do you think it's going?
It was the right moment to call the election for the reasons that I outlined. And Fiona, I am. Look, of course these things are difficult, but as actually answer the first question over there, right? When I was standing against Liz Truss in that leadership election, I had the same questions from everybody. You're behind. Why are you bothering? Isn't this all, this is all very difficult? I said, no, well, I'm fighting for what I believe is right. Right? Even though people didn't want to hear it at the time, I kept going. I kept saying what I thought was right for this country. I kept going to the end. And you know what? I was proved right then. And that's why you can trust me now when I say that what Keir Starmer is promising you is the same fantasy that Liz Truss did, and it's just going to mean your taxes are going to go up. And that matters to me because I don't want that to happen.
Okay.
And that's why we're having this election, and that's what I'm going to keep fighting
He obviously
for.
disputes that, but let's take a question from Edie Lewis. Edie Lewis. Oh, there you go. A little bit further back, look, with the glasses, yeah.
As Labour are predicted to win a landslide victory, do you have any regrets about any actions you've taken during your premiership?
Sorry, what was your name?
Edie.
Edie. I mean,
any regrets, Prime Minister?
Slightly, of course. No one gets everything right, and I've been very open about that, and I completely understand people's frustrations with me, with the Conservative Party, with the last few years.
Do you want to be open about what regrets you might have?
But what this election is about the future. Now, we've been talking about various things, but fundamentally...
Prime Minister, I'm certainly going to... Because that's actually not the question. The question is, do you have any regrets about any decisions taken during your premiership? And you say you've been quite open, so perhaps you could be open with us about what they might be.
Look, everyone have their own views on it, and this is not
What are your views?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I wish we'd made more progress on the waiting list. I've been very open about that. Right? I wish we had made more progress on the waiting list. It's something that was important to me. We haven't made as much progress as I would have liked. I've explained the reasons, and we're making progress now. But fundamentally, this election is about the future. I've had this job for 18 months. You've seen what I've done. My primary job, the most important task I had was to make sure our economy was back in good health, and it now is. And that's the thing that you have to think about going forward. Right. We're in a position now, as I said I would. I said once we got things back to where they were, we could start cutting your taxes. Okay. And we've put out a proposal, and if you know, this is really important.
Because I think you've made that point already. That's the only thing I was going to say.
But it's important to me because people are asking about the election, right? That is the important issue at stake in this election. I'm going to continue cutting taxes for people at every stage of their lives, whether you're a pensioner, whether you're in work, whether you're setting up a small business, if you're self-employed, whether you're a young couple trying to buy your first home. I want to cut your taxes and deliver financial security. The alternative is Keir Starmer, who is going to put your taxes up, as we've seen over the last few days.
Which he disputes, I have to say. He's obviously just been here.
He spent the last 3 days avoiding telling anyone about putting up council tax.
All right. And obviously under Conservatives...
that is what's coming, and I'm going to fight very hard to make sure that doesn't happen.
With the biggest tax take under Conservative government, as you know, for many years. Yes.
So I'm just going back a step. Are you really considering leaving the ECHR to push forward your Rwanda policy, which, let's be honest, is devoid of strategic thinking and just is inhumane?
So you're talking about the European Court of Human Rights. So just in case, we're talking about the European Court of Human Rights.
So, do you know what happened last month? 15 other European countries all signed a statement about illegal migration. And do you know what they said? All of them agreed. Italy, Netherlands, lots of other countries. All of them agreed that having the ability to remove illegal migrants to a safe third country was an important part of the solution to this problem because it removes the incentive for them to come in the first place. Right? So you have your view. I
You're
disagree.
being asked, would you leave the European Court
I'm
of
going to get
Human
onto that,
Rights?
but you said that you had a point about the policy. I'm just telling you, I disagree with you. 15 other European countries just a few weeks ago decided that they agree with me, right?
Did the
And what I've
Supreme Court
also
call
been
it
clear,
unlawful?
what I've been crystal clear, and that's why we've passed a new piece of legislation to address the concerns of our court, because I respect our court. They raise concerns. That's why we passed a new piece of legislation, and that's why their flights will now go if I'm Prime Minister. And when it comes to the ECHR, I am crystal clear. Right? I believe everything that we are doing is in compliance with our international obligations, but if a foreign court, including the European Court, forces me to choose between our country's national security and membership of that court, I'm going to choose this country's national security every single time.
So when you say it's a foreign court, just to be clear, when you say it's a foreign court, it's a court that we were part of setting up as Great Britain, as the United Kingdom. It also has a British judge sitting on it. So I'm just wondering why you call it a foreign court. It's a court that we were part of establishing.
Yes, but it is in Strasbourg, Fiona. That means that it's not a British
but
court.
It's not a court that has nothing to do with us. We were absolutely instrumental in setting it up.
But my point is very clear. I believe everything we're doing is in compliance with our rules and regulations, but this issue is too important to not to be able to grip. I want to deliver on the thing that I promised you I would deliver on. I want to get these flights off, build this incentive, or remove the incentive, build the deterrent. It's the only way to solve this problem. Now, you and I disagree on that, right? You think it's fine for people to come and they shouldn't be removed. That's your decision. I don't think that's right for our country, and that's why I'm prepared to do what it takes to get this problem resolved.
Sorry, let's go. You're saying you didn't say that.
No, I'll say, are you considering leaving the ECHR?
Well, I think
did
we've had-
say,
we've had
yeah,
that answer. I've answered that
but you
very
just
clearly.
put words in my mouth
Okay.
then.
All right, but I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
And there's a man over there looking very keen to say something with a black t-shirt. Yeah. Off you go.
It's just a point I'd like to make. There's only 2 other countries in the world that don't subscribe to the ECHR, Russia and Belarus.
Sir, with the greatest respect, we do not need a foreign court to tell us how to police our borders and our security, right? And I believe that everything we're doing is in compliance with our international obligations. But if I'm put in a position where I'm forced to choose between those things, I'm going to put our country's national security first every single time. And I make absolutely no apology about that.
I've got about 30 seconds left. Very quick question.
I'm 19, so I'm too old to do national service if you did bring that in, and I'm not looking to get a mortgage in the next parliament, so anything to do with that wouldn't impact me. Is there any policy you can offer me that would positively impact my life and the life of people who are my age?
Forgive me because we're pretty much out of time. Could you name one?
What, are you studying at the moment? Where are you studying? Oh, you're at York Uni.
Okay.
And what work
Sadly,
do you want
we
to do?
don't have time for these niceties. One policy.
You know what? Very simply, when you get your job, I'm going to cut your taxes. You're going to keep more of your money and spend it on whatever you want. There you go.
All right. So you got something of an answer, so I had to cut it short. That is it for now. Well done for all your stamina, folks, for sticking with the 2 hours. Thank you for your questions. Prime Minister, thank you very much for taking part in this. That is our Leaders special over for now. But don't forget, we have got the Plaid Cymru special on B2 on Monday. We're back on Thursday for the usual routine. And then
Okay, well that's it. That's it. Leaders debate. The first one that came on today was Sir Ed Davey. No, not Sir Ed Davey. What is this, Sir? Ed Davey from the Lib Dems, and then you also had John Sweeney from the SNP, and then you had Sir Keir Starmer, and then the wrapping up was with Mr. Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister. Of course, there's something that you can hear which was being said a while ago while he was having the discussions a while ago, or talking to the people or speaking to the persons. The rhetoric or the sound which was coming from persons were change. That's what it is. It is going to be very interesting to see what the polls are in regards to this particular debate as to who won. My thinking is, I think I know who was won this particular debate. But for any person who have any issues at this time in regards to the policies, in regards to getting a new leader or so, vote. This is my postal vote, which came in today. So I'm ready to. I've seen all the different persons, and I'll make a decision, and I'll put my X where it should go. It is very important. Now, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that people will be expecting of politicians, and people are going to actually, even when or if Keir Starmer becomes the prime minister, they're going to be somewhat having some disappointment when they realize that it is not going to be a quick fix. It reminds me of when Barack Obama came to be the president of America, and it was a great moment. Yes, we can change, and it didn't materialize, but it was the emotions at that time and the element of change, and change can actually conjure up something of a hopeful thing. And of course, after 14 years, I believe most persons will say it's time for a new person. Actually, I believe that even in Jamaica, after 8 years, after 2 terms, you need a different leader. You need a different party, because sometimes when you're in there for so long, sometimes you get constipation of the power joints. They say sometimes power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So sometimes there's a need for change, and maybe it's a conservative time to take a break and let Labour come in or so. But we'll see, because I remember when you had the elections with Mr. Ed Miliband, and then when you had that election with Mr. Jeremy Corbyn, something that was very interesting. What was very interesting was the fact that the polls were pointing towards a victory for both of them, and the polls did not return that. I don't think that's what's going to happen this time, based on the polls regarding a Labour particular victory, if anything. But in a way, I don't think it's going to be that amount. But anyway, I could be wrong. We're going to see what reform does, or so, and they're trying to bring in reform into the main debate as well. So that is going to be a very interesting thing. When Tony Blair with the biggest Madrid, Labour had a lead forever. The UK had its best year for decades. Okay, I hear what you're saying, Larry Sarpong, that the UK had the best in debates. But actually, there's always the saying that the Labour always spend off money which they don't have. But anyway, change can cause fear and uncertainties. Yes, because Britain want to vote for an Indian prime minister. No, because Britain want to vote for an Indian prime minister. Simple. I won't get into the semantics of a person color and a person's race, because I believe that is not a factor that should actually come into play. Even though I believe that persons may want it, I believe a person should be judged on their character, and as well. And also, I believe that just because a person maybe is wealthy and a person as riches, that doesn't mean to say that they cannot empathize and feel certain things. I'm a person who will never fight down someone for their wealth, or have a go at someone because of the hard work, or they're going to some sort of wealth. We've got to sometime accept and appreciate that not everybody's going to be the same as well. But that's just my view as well. But anyway, I want to thank you so much for joining, and it was a very interesting discussion. I don't want to go into it any much further, but what you need to do is to get out there and to vote, and to vote, and to vote, and don't just wait for every 4 or 5 years to vote. Voting is a process that is a one-off situation. You can one of every 4 years, every 5 years, but one need to get involved in the political process, that deal with policies, that join up with political parties, that get into the constituency, that become councillors, that actually go to surgeries, that actually lobby, effective lobby as well, and not to wait for, and not believing that the political servants have the answer, but that we also as individuals need to play our part, because I believe that without a shadow of a doubt, whether it is Labour, whether it is Lib Dem, whether it is Green or whatever, that won't make a big difference for me when it comes on to my work, when it comes on to my fight, getting on in this country as well as an immigrant, because I've been here from 1992 on the successive governments, and trust me, I know which party I'm with, and but it makes no difference. It makes no difference. We have got to reach the point whereby the party doesn't make the big difference. It is you that will make the big difference. That's all I can see. But anyway, yeah, all the best, guys, and peace out, and really, 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 use the you see, we have got these God-given abilities. We have got these things which are birthed inside of us that we can actually make a big difference. You see, I need to go back into this. For too long, people sometimes are waiting on political leaders to make the difference, to conjure up a difference, or to make change, when really and truly that change really gonna come from you, the person in the mirror. That's what I believe very strongly. That's what I believe very strongly, as much as possible. But anyway, Saturday night, we will be back again, and we'll be talking about maybe the diaspora conference in Jamaica, which is a very interesting thing. And we'll see how that goes, because Jamaica is poised in a way regarding this constitution reform, and we've got to keep talking about it. We've got to keep talking about the whole dual citizenship, and we've got to talk about removing the king as the head of state for Jamaica as well. And the thing about, should someone who has a British passport can go into parliament in Jamaica? What can I say? It's a big one. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good night, and God bless you. Remember to like and subscribe to the Sylbourne Show. Peace out. And follow the Walk and Talk motivational moments in the morning. Peace out, and God bless you. Bye-bye.